A good Tuesday afternoon to everybody, and once again, welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. Today's a special show for me, man. We're going to be talking a lot of Eagles today, but it's special because my co-worker, good friend, Derek Gunn, is joining me live right now, and it's just me and D. Gun on one. Hey man, you and I never did a gun on one, man. I had to get you to come on my show to do a gun on.
You big time me. Every time you saw me in the office, you walked past me like you didn't know me. So no, I'm just playing. I wish you had playing when we first started Comcast Sportsnet, because I know for a fact, just like Hugh Douglas, Ike Reese, Bobby Taylor, all the way up to Brandon Graham, John Runyon, you would have been a star post game live because of your honesty and your forthcoming and you say and do.
Man, they would have been beeping on post game live so much with me as an interview after the game.
That's true. We'd have needed a 20-second delay for you, not 7 seconds. We would have needed a 20-second delay for you.
That's okay though, man. It's the realness. It's the realness of what you bring to a show that makes the show so exciting. And it's one of the reasons why I'm thrilled to have you on, because what you do is you get down to the nitty gritty with the players. Obviously the game, but it's been your relationship over the years with the players as they come off the field, when they're doing their gun on one segment during the week for pre and post game live, so on and so forth. That really makes the difference, because people want to get into the lives and they want to get to know their players in an intimate kind of way, and you always provided that, my friend.
The one thing I can say, Seth, in the 41 years that I've been doing this, is being consistent. I can go to my grave and say I never dimed out a source, whether it was a player, a coach, a front office personnel. I never dimed out. And Seth, as you know, from an athlete's perspective, it's difficult to trust the media in a lot of ways, because media a lot of times is just trying to dig up stories. When you're in the market like Cincinnati, Green Bay, Buffalo, those have much smaller contingents of media personnel. And I've covered the Chargers, I've covered the Packers, covered the Steelers, and of course the Eagles for 23 years. When you work in a large media volume like Philadelphia, where on the average you have anywhere from 50 to 75 media thrusting mics, microphones, cameras in your face every day, you don't know who you can trust, and you're very guarded with what you say a lot of times. So because of my consistency, what has happened throughout my career is, when I'm in a certain market and I've established a certain amount of credibility and trustworthiness, players talk in the locker room and they say, this is a guy you can trust. This is a guy who you can trust. He's not trying to get the best of you. And when those players are starting to leave, the baton is passed on. The existing players welcoming in new players will tell new players, there's only a few players you can trust. And by the grace of God, I've been one of those players. I've been one of those media people that players have consistently trusted. So if there's anything that I've done consistently, is that I've been honest with everybody that I've dealt with in this industry.
Well, let me tell you something, man. You're beloved. When you announced on social media that you were no longer going to be with NBC, it went viral. I mean, you had everything from videos from a Brian Dawkins, to just text after text after text, of fans and people, who loved you. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I want my viewers also, to shoot your best questions for Derek as well, because they want to know. I mean, I wanted this to be interactive, intimate between just you and I, so where you and I can just talk football, and I got a script, but you know how it's, when it's organic, you just let it flow. And that's what I want to do. But I also want to give my viewers an opportunity, to ask questions, and ask him questions that make sense. I mean, don't come on here, asking, why, he left, NBC. Let's do this the right way. But I just want to touch on what you said a second ago. a lot of times when you go into a press conference, whether it's for coaches or whether it's for players, there's a lot of
Yeah.
people present in there asking questions that don't know what the hell they're doing. And I think the fact that you have such a great knowledge of the game of football, when you begin to interact with some of these guys, some of the questions that you ask the players and the coaches, they realize, hey, this guy understands the game. He's asking pertinent questions to get answers to the pertinent information that the fans want to hear. What's your thought on that?
I've always tried to tell people coming up after me, first of all, I was blessed along the way in my career to be mentored by some great people. A guy named Phil Stone in San Diego, who was a sports director at NBC when I was there. And he was also doing play by play for NBC Sports doing NFL football then. Then I got to go back to my hometown, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I got to work with a guy named Earl Gillespie, who was the radio voice of the Wisconsin Badgers for, my goodness, 50 something years. Everybody knew Earl Gillespie from the top of the state to the bottom. I grew up watching Earl Gillespie on CBS Channel 6 in Milwaukee when I was a kid, and I got to work with him for 5 years. And then when I went to Pittsburgh, I got to work with a guy named Sam Nover, who was also doing play-by-play football for NBC Sports at the time. So, and they all groomed me. They took me under their wing, and they were honest with me, and sometimes they were tough on me as well. And but they always said, you know what? Be who you are. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our business try to create a character, and they're figured out in a hurry that they're a character. Be who you are, and let people understand who you are and see who you are, and you will win more people over than not with that kind of approach. And that's why I've been blessed in a lot of ways to do that. And I tell young people coming up behind me, do your homework. Don't go in there trying to find out information without doing your homework. Do your homework not on just the game, but on the subjects you're interviewing. You may find when you and with the advent of internet and all this stuff, you can find out so much stuff about individuals. You may find out you come from the same state as this guy. You can have a conversation about that before you start talking about X's and O's. You might like hunting like he does, fishing. It might be an artist, musician. Do your homework. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our business, Seth, don't do their homework. They think they can just grab a mic, get in the camera, and ask all the questions they want, and sometimes ask tough questions, sometimes ask the wrong questions. And that's not how you get to know people. Because of anything, they become more standoffish against you because of your approach. But if you have a direct conversation with somebody before you become the interviewer and the interviewee, it helps that individual relax, as you know, and it makes an interview flow that much better.
Awesome stuff. Well, man, let's jump into some Eagles talk. The questions are flying. I'm looking at them. Everything from your
Wait,
barbecue.
I get the first question.
Okay.
This is what I wanted to ask you for a long time because I've been asked this question for like the last 5 years wherever I go. Why does Seth Joyner look so angry all the time? And I said that's his happy face. Now I'm going to let the man himself respond to that.
Well, listen, man, I tell people all the time, my life is blessed, man. I got two healthy kids.
Yeah.
I get to, talk about the game that I love. I can't do anything about the look that God gave me, And when if people are not fearful in the way that they will come up and engage me in conversations, those that do, they understand that there's nothing to be fearful about. My thing is, what am I going to do? Bite you? I'm going to tackle you? What is it?
I was afraid of you when I first met you. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, I know that's the veneer that most people see. And it is the veneer. I mean, because really at the end of the day, we all have our look. I mean,
right.
And this is what people have come to learn and expect. I mean, how fake would I be in the realest of environments if I got on TV and I start doing the smile like it's just my look. And when a situation warrants a smile, I give a smile. When I'm talking about the game that I love, I'm highly passionate about. And the team that I'm most highly passionate about that I play for,
right.
it's almost personal. So I can understand where people, come to a point where they look at me and they say, man, that guy is just, too intense to be on TV. But I'm intense about everything. That's just the way that I'm wired.
All right. I've been wanting to ask you
So,
that a long.
any other question you got, just fire, man. But I'm telling you, I'm getting a lot of questions. People want to know, what's your next venture? Obviously, he's not going to tell you that. You'll see that when that happens. But everything from, your social media renowned for your barbecue skills, so on and so forth. People just want to know what you're doing with yourself. They want to know that you're okay, man.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody out there that has responded on social media, texting me, phone calls, current players, ex-players, my boy DJ Jazzy Jeff. And the love has been tremendous. It has overwhelmed me to a point and to a degree I never thought that it would. But I think it just goes to show that even though I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Philadelphia, and the region of South Jersey and North Delaware in my veins, and this is as much my home as my hometown, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin is. My next moves, I've basically been chilling for a couple of weeks, and my wife said, "All right, it's time to get back to work. It's time for you to get back to work." And so now I'm pursuing some things. I've done some auditions for some things. I'm exploring a couple of podcast ventures that are really interesting. My webpage will be coming up soon. My middle kid, my daughter Christina, is an incredible graphic designer. She's designing my webpage even as we speak. I'm getting my equipment in order, and I'm going to do some things for some other companies as well. And then there's some other things I'm going to announce that I'm going to do outside of media, outside of sports as well. I've been covering sports for 41 years. And when God closes one door, when man closes one door, God opens another door. And right now, God is opening a whole bunch of doors for me, doors I never even thought about walking through. And I'm excited about the prospects. So instead of just having to rely on one entity to support me and my family, by the grace of God, hopefully there's 4, 5, 6 different things that I really want to pursue and attack and see if I can master that I'm looking forward to doing.
That's gonna be awesome, man. And we're all looking forward to it, man. You're a guy that needs to be on everyone's TV when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm hopeful that it remains in this area. But think about the beautiful thing about being beloved in the city of Philadelphia. And I know that you're beloved. I know that feeling because I was away from the city for a long time and came back, and they rewrapped their arms around me. When you're serious about what you do and you're good at what you do, whether you're from here or not, if you do it to the best of your ability for the city of Philadelphia, they love you for a lifetime.
Yeah. There's no question about that. And when I came to this market in 1997, the one thing I wanted to say, I didn't want to just fit in and be like everybody else. I wanted to be different from everybody else. I wanted to stand out from everybody else and not be a character. And when my company asked me the second year of the existence of Comcast Sportsnet, hey, would you be the full-time Eagles reporter? I just laughed and said, you know what? Let's roll. I said, but if I do this, I want to do it both home and away. They just wanted me to do it for home games. I said, if I do this, I need to do this home and away and at practices. And they said, oh, okay. And I knew within myself what I was capable of doing before I got to this market, that was the way that I had to approach this. Consistency was the key. The more people that saw you on TV or heard you on radio, the more they got familiar with you and your style and your approach. And then when I gained that trust, when I began to break stories, and Seth, I can tell you this honestly, for every story that I broke covering the Philadelphia Eagles, there's at least 10 or 15 stories that I will never tell, because if I ever told those stories on an annual basis, I'd have to go into the witness protection program. They'd have people looking for me. So there's stories I will never tell. And that's part of the trust factor, because I've had certain entities in that organization come up to me time and time again and say, hey, thank you so much for not putting that out there. And because I did that or didn't do that, that was the reason why I got other things down the road.
But that's professionalism, and that's what everybody
Yep.
respects. Before we move on to the Eagles, man, I just want to read. You know, Eric Lilly says D Gun and Brandon Graham interviews a classic. He gives you, two strong arms. Um,
Yeah.
Scott Streeter says, great to hear from you, Gunner. Um,
Thank you.
Timothy Floria, gonna miss his voice. I mean, listen, man. I thought they loved me. My goodness, man, they are showing
Uh,
D Gun all kind of love up in here.
you know,
Um,
people talking about me
Let
like
me see
they're
what
doing a
else. What
unit.
else?
I'm not dead yet, folks. Don't count me out yet. Things are
Well,
happening.
well, you, you're not dead, but you know how Philly is, man. Philly gets to a place sometimes, man, where you know they like they like for things to be the way that they are,
Yep.
and the crazy part is, when you tune into the Eagles this year, not only the craziness of the COVID, but it's going to look markedly different the pre and post game. Like
Yeah.
um, I I think that I'm going to be via video. I'm not going to be in studio.
Mm,
You're not going to have Derek Gunn interviewing the guys, midweek and showing that on Sunday, and you're not going to have
right.
D Gunn standing there. So people know that there's going to be massive changes, to what this
Yep.
thing looks like. And one thing about the Eagles fans, they don't like a lot of change. They don't like a lot
Yeah.
of change at all. They like things to be a certain way, for things to be approached a certain way, and to know that such an integral part of their Eagles coverage is not going to be there, at least on that station, I will say,
Yeah. Yeah.
has them feeling some type of way, and rightfully so. Mike Constantino always loved D Gun, won't be the same.
Thank, thank you, Mike.
All right, man. We'll get to some more of their questions, because what I wanted to do is have my producers bring on a couple of people, that will ask you a sensible question. We'll give them a login number, where they can get the link and come on and chat with you for a little bit. But let's talk about our birds, man, because it's upon us. We're all excited, you know, waiting with bated breath to see if this thing will jump off. And always as usual, the first issue is dealing with injuries,
Yep.
and especially in this era with no OTAs and no real preparation. To me, the Hargrave and Barnett injuries are the two major ones. Peterson
Right.
and Whiteside, even though they were injured, they're back. And then you look and you see Kelsey, D. Jackson, Malik Jackson got a day off today after one day in pads.
Well, I'm not surprised one bit. And if you look across the league, look at what has happened. Gerald McCoy for the Cowboys lost for the season. Robert Alford for the Cardinals lost for the season. When you haven't had the off-season workouts, the OTAs, the mini camps, and now you're having a crash course training camp with no preseason games, trying to get ready for the real deal, you're going to be subject to more injuries, more soft tissue type injuries. I don't care how much of a workout demon you are on your own during an off season. There's nothing like training camp workouts when you have those trainers overlooking everything that you do and your reps, and you're forced to keep charts so they know that you're getting this stuff in. Because when you work out on your own, Seth, as you know, no matter how good you are, you'll push yourself to a certain point, and then all of a sudden you'll back off. Okay, that's enough for today. When you're in training camp, you have people say, no, 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 you still have X amount of reps to go. We got to get these tendons right. Okay, we got to, I mean, every year the volume of injuries go up in the National Football League. These guys are bigger, faster, stronger, but the playing surface is not getting any wider. Okay, so the collisions are more violent. The injuries have become more violent. Look at what happened to Alex Smith. Now he's coming back by the grace of God, but that was devastating for a while. It was life threatening for a while what he
Mhm.
went through. So these guys now who are sustaining these injuries, these back muscle injuries, hamstring injuries, I'm not surprised. And you're going to have a lot more of these. So it's upon the coaches to really back off. You got even more so now. Andy Reid is a prime example of a coach who knew how to back off of veteran players when they practice to a certain point. More coaches are going to have to adapt to that even more so now. We've got to push them, but we've got to back up. We're not going to have a team. We're going to be pulling guys from the Canadian League to play for us because the guys on our practice squad, that's not enough to fill some of these holes on this team. So, but I just hope that teams can go about their business and get ready, but you got to do it in an extremely different manner, like you've never done before, because you're in a situation with this COVID thing, like something we've never seen before, to get your guys ready to play the real games.
Well, I mean, I'll ask you the question because I'm always fascinated by people's thoughts and
Yep.
opinions. Why, to me, it seems like guys get more injured today in the game of
Yeah.
football, in the world of football, than he did back in the day when I played.
Yeah.
I can't remember so many soft tissue injuries. I can't remember
Right.
so many. I mean, when a guy tore an ACL, it was like this major anomaly. It's almost commonplace now that you're going to have at least
Yeah.
one guy on your roster every single year that tears his
Yep.
ACL. In your opinion, what is it? Because I've always contended that they don't work hard enough. I hear your advocation and I understand why you would say to back off. You got to figure out when to back off.
Right.
But
Right.
they drove us, man. I mean, those 2 days and all that hitting and whatnot. And maybe
Yep.
by the time we got out of training camp, we were a little beat up and we were a little behind the curve. But all of a sudden, by the time we got to week 2, week 3, week 4, we are now all of a sudden we got our legs on us and we're ready to play. And those little bruises that you get in training camp, they're no longer bruises because they're calcified, they're hardened, your body's hardened. So just your opinion, what do you think it is? I mean, have we become too technologically advanced as far as the game is concerned?
I think under this new CBA, where you can only have X amount of practices, X amount of time in the practice field, I think that has been a detriment. It's what the players wanted, and the players got that in their new CBA, but and the previous CBA as well. I think that has done more harm than good in terms of preparing players. And you're right. When I first got here, we were up at Lehigh all the time with Andy Reid, and you'd have knockdown dragouts twice a day once they started putting on the pads. And I think players' bodies are just not ready like they used to be by the time they get to a regular season. I mean, these dudes are bigger, stronger, more muscular. But when you got offensive linemen who go 6'6", 320 pounds, and they're running 4.7 40s, and you got a defensive tackle or a linebacker coming at you who's 6'2", 6'3", 265, that's a train wreck, man. And that's every play.
Yeah.
You got running going 250 now, running 4.5s, 4.6s. And when he bears down on a cornerback or a safety, I mean, that's like trying to stop a bull. And sometimes the bull will back up and run you over again. And so the body wasn't made to absorb a lot of what is happening to these players now. And so the game is what it is now. This is what players wanted. Players wanted to have more recovery time, so to speak, instead of being out there being pushed to the limit, coming off the field dead tired, sore all the time, running to the ice tub, so on and so forth. Well, this is what you have now. And because these guys are so much bigger and faster, because the collisions are so much more violent, this is the game that we know it now, and this is going to continue. I don't know if there's anything else you can do with the way the game is structured right now to alleviate, even more physical damage. And, you're starting to see more and more younger players, 25, 26, 27, getting out the game now like you never did before. These guys have come to the conclusion this is not worth it. A peace of mind and being able to play with my children when I'm in my mid 30s and 40s and having my mental faculties when I'm in my 50s, 60s, and hopefully 70s and 80s, that's more important than that almighty dollar. And I applaud a lot of players. Seth, when you think about you sacrifice your body from the time you play Pop Warner football, high school, college, to be one of the elite few, the chosen few to get a chance to put a uniform on in the National Football League and to play the game at the highest level and to get paid money you could only dream of. And then all of a sudden at 25, 26, 27, you say, I've had enough. I applaud players who do that. I know it irks a lot of fans, and it angers a lot of fans. But you know what? From a selfless standpoint, not selfish, selfless standpoint of thinking about long-term health, not just for myself, but the people I love, I applaud players who stand back and do that because that's incredible that you're going to walk away from money you may never see again because you're more concerned about your body and your mind more so than the almighty dollar.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we got John. John's got a question. Pop him in. Hey, John, how you doing, man? Welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. What's your question for today?
Hey, Seth, thanks for taking my call. D-Gun, man, first I'd like to say thank you, sir. And my question
Thank you.
to you, D-Gun, is what would be your most memorable moments, if you want to share them with us, of
Yeah.
of the game? Not necessarily whether it be in Green Bay or it's in Philadelphia or it's sitting next to Seth or whatever you might think.
Yeah. Of the game
And
itself, I would, in all honesty, it's being having the privilege to cover this game as long as I have, to get to be um, friends with so many ex-athletes and current athletes. What I've done is something that I never wanted to do. If when I was 19, 20, 21 years old, if you asked me a list of the top 20 jobs I would want to do, being in the media would have been like 28th or 29th. I really didn't want to do this. But once I got in it and found out what I could do with it and what it afforded me, the opportunities to be have been in every stadium in the NFL in my career. Think about how many people can say that. I've been in every stadium in the NFL in my career. I've interviewed some of the greatest athletes from Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris. My goodness, John Riggins. Um, and think about all the great Eagles players, Brian Dawkins, and I are very close friends. It was something I couldn't even comprehend back then. But if I had to say and I've covered 11 Super Bowls in my lifetime. If I had to say one definitive moment that stood out from the rest, it was watching the Philadelphia Eagles finally win a Super Bowl. This was a
Mhm.
team that took a lot of criticism. There's 12 Super Bowl champions in the NFC East, and the Eagles have zero. And the fans took that personally, and I understand why. As I got to know Philadelphia and its fan base, I understand why. But the euphoria that followed on that football field, to see all these guys that we had covered for so long standing there crying like babies and holding on to that trophy and embracing each other, and to see front office people shedding a tear, I think that's one of the best moments in my career in terms of covering pro football.
Well, we're gonna take a couple more questions as they come, but let's move on. To Carson Wentz. In my opinion, the most important guy
Yep.
on this football team. He showed up at about 250 pounds. Looked like he put on some serious muscle, intent on getting himself ready to play this year, injury free. I hope he can make it through the entire year, man. To be honest with you, I'm sick and tired of people in Philly killing this kid.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of people
Yeah.
outside of Philly, talking about the injury. Listen, he had an ACL tear. They rushed him back. He had a fracture in his back. And then he got hit in the back of the head last year. That's not injury prone in my book.
No.
But tell me what you see in Carson. I mean, the thing I love about Carson, I think at the end of last year, because some of the normal players that are there weren't there, it
Right.
allowed him to now step into this leadership role.
Right.
And you hear him talk about a Jalen Rager and how he's got 1,001 questions. And the fact that the Eagles went and drafted 3 receivers and traded for another one to try to upgrade that position with young guys that could grow with a Carson Wentz.
Mm-hmm. Go back to 2019. Look at what Carson Wentz had to throw to for the latter half of the season. I mean, they were pulling people in off the streets, off the practice squad. And Carson Wentz willed that team to not only win the division, but to get to the playoffs. So now, keep your fingers crossed. You have Deshaun Jackson back. Your first round pick, Jalen Rager, is supposed to be a speedster. You have some interesting young kids who could help this team out in Hightower and Watkins. J.J. Arthega-Whiteside has to elevate his game twofold compared to what he did last year. You have 2 great tight ends. If the weight addition doesn't affect Carson's mobility and durability, I think Carson Wentz has the capability of being an elite quarterback in 2020. even throwing to a lot of people that he's never thrown the football before, even though there's no preseason games, even though OTAs, mini camps gone. I think Carson Wentz is that special of an athlete to be able to do some of the things he did last year. And Alshon Jeffrey is not there. And to be honest with you, I don't think they need an Alshon Jeffrey to be successful in the passing game. They didn't have him last year. Look what he did. Okay. So you've got more speed now. You've gotten younger. You've got some hungry kids out there. You have another kid in Whiteside who's got a lot to prove. And you have a quarterback. I think Carson Wentz throws better on the run than he does in the pocket in a lot of ways. So if bulking up helps him sustain a lot of the punishment that he may have to take, and it doesn't affect his arm strength and his ability to get outside the pocket to do some of the things he does, I think he's going to have a phenomenal year.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the youth, man, that they've that they brought in, and where does and how do you see the offense leveling up? I mean, you don't go and bring in all these sub 4.4 guys without
Right.
the intent of throwing the ball. When I look at a guy like Rager getting a lot of high praise early in camp,
Right.
a guy like
Right.
Watkins and Hightower who made plays and flashed. JJ to me is always going to be a big question mark, because until he can show that he can level up to the NFL level, I think we're all going to have some questions and some reservations about not only the draft pick, but
Right.
where they drafted him. And obviously, Djax, it's really all with him. It's all about how many games can you keep him healthy for, because
Right.
as long as he's healthy, he's a game changer. And at what point in time can you get Alshon back? Or are you devising this offense to operate without him? And maybe you IR him, for some of the issues that we talked about, last year and during the offseason. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but when I look at this offense now, my goodness, they look highly explosive. Highly explosive.
Yeah. I agree. And don't forget about throwing to the kids out of the backfield. Miles Sanders, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a star in the National Football League. I don't want to see him get to a point where he's getting the ball 350, 400 touches in a season. I don't think he's built for that. Last season, he had 229 total touches. If you elevate that to around 300, 315 touches for a season, I think that's perfect for him. Look at what he's capable of doing when he's in open space. Look at the speed that he has when he's in open space and how he can separate himself. Across the board, the Eagles have speed, more so than they've had in recent years. If all of this meshes and comes together, you can't just defend one area of the field. Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are what they are in the middle of the field. They're going to get their touches. But when you start opening up things on the outside and getting respect on the outside as well, not just one side, but both sides, and you can't double cover both sides, somebody's going to be free eventually. And I like that aspect about this offense because it's going to be even more unpredictable now. You don't have to have a so-called favorite target to go through like a lot of teams do. Now, when you start opening that thing up, you keeping linebackers and safeties and cornerbacks on their heels, and there's going to be a lot of confusion on the defensive side of the football because you can't, the coyote can't catch the road runner every time, right? So
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? So if that offensive line holds up and gives Carson time to stand back there and pat the ball 1,002, 1,003, look out. That's all I'm gonna say. Look out.
Well, let's touch on the running backs, and then we'll come back to the tight ends.
Okay.
Doug Peterson has outwardly said that Miles Sanders is going to be the guy this year.
Yeah.
I've watched and covered the Eagles over the last 4 to 5 years, and one thing that they've been consistent with their running backs is a limit on the amount of touches that the running backs get every game. Very rarely have you seen, since Doug Peterson has been the head coach here, a running back get more than 16 to 17 carries in a game. So what does that mean when Doug Peterson comes out and says that, hey, he's going to be that guy? Are we talking 25 touches, and another 5 or 6 in the pass game? When you get to that level, do you exceed that number that you talked about of where you actually put him at risk? I think that there's some kind of metric, D-Gun, that the Eagles have been using where they realize that once a running back exceeds the 16 carry limit in a game, his propensity for injury goes up.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. And Doug is smart enough to know don't wear your horse down in the first half of the season, because you're going to need them even more so in the second half of a season, especially if you're fortunate enough to get to a playoffs. So if Doug Peterson says, well, Miles Sanders is my lead back, okay, he may get 5 or 6 touches more a game than Boston Scott, than Corey Clement. And if the offense is running, this offense averages over 4 yards a carry with the running back by committee. So if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. You look at when they had LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi in their Super Bowl year, and Corey Clement, and how they rotated those guys. How well did that work in helping them get to a Super Bowl, especially when Carson Wentz went down and you had Nick Foles quarterback in that team? How much that running game helped open up that passing game for Nick Foles that Super Bowl season? So I think it needs to stay status quo. You had 2 young backs who were your workhorses last year down the stretch in Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. Now Corey Clement is back for 1 more year. Corey has a chip on his shoulder, has a proverbial chip on his shoulder. I've had a chance to talk with him, and he understands this situation. He's going in as a number 3 back now. So he wants to elevate his status. So you got 3 young, hungry backs back there. They all want the football, and that's fine. But you also want some young, fresh legs come late November, December, and hopefully into January.
You guys, you've listened to the Seth Joyner Show live on me today. With me today is my guy, Derek Gunn. Derek, as I look at, is Zach Ertz expendable with the growth of Dallas Goedert? A lot of people have called in the offseason for the Eagles to package up Zach Ertz rather than paying him the type of money that a Travis Kelce and a Kittles has signed for. Yeah. We know that the Eagles are going to be cap strapped next year, that the team may look completely different next year. Is Zach Ertz a priority at the going rate, or do the Eagles find a way to move on from him, make Dallas the number 1 tight end, and try to draft and groom the next guy to come along?
I don't think Dallas Goedert's game right now entails the ability to create the separation that Zach Ertz is able to do right now. We all chastise Zach for not being able to break tackles and going down after one swipe at the legs. But look at what he did a couple of years ago when he had over 100 catches. And that's the Zach Ertz I want in my offense. I want a tight end who can not only block, maybe not block great, but can get that separation and can make the big catch when I need him. Dallas, to me, right now, is still a better blocker than he is a pass catcher. And that's not a knock against Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert has good hands. Dallas Goedert made some big catches for this team. But Zach Ertz is more of that Travis Kelce, that ability to get away from that linebacker, to push off and get away from that safety that's in his face. I don't think Dallas is quite there yet, and I think Howie Roseman has identified that, as well as Doug Peterson. But here's what I do know about Howie Roseman. If somebody made him the right offer, for Zach Ertz, and it would have to be a nice offer, Howie's not above letting Zach move on and letting somebody else pay him and using those assets that he would get to help make this team younger and hopefully better. And he will go out and get him a tight end in free agency. I was talking with people in the organization. Right now, the Eagles are about, 20-something million under the cap, but they're supposed to be 50-something million over the cap in 2021. Mm-hmm. Yet, from what I was told inside, is we're not worried about that. We've got that. If anybody can figure out how to work the cap back to their favor, it's Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman is the king of capology. He learned well from Joe Banner in that regard. So, yes, I love Zach Ertz. Doug Peterson's smart enough to know he's a vital cog in his offense, but the organization as a whole is smart enough to know if somebody is willing to give us something that can help us in the immediate future, not the long term, we have to identify that and possibly go after it.
Well, when you talk about Carson and you talk about the running game and you're talking about, the improvements at wide receiver, those are all moot issues if you're not looking at the offensive line and how much they can actually protect a guy like Carson Wentz. Because, listen, at the Brandon Brooks loss is a major loss.
No question.
Would Jason Peters be, 100%, a great fill in there? I've been saying, for the last 3 years, I felt like they should have moved him in the guard out of the tackle position. But the greatest question mark is going to be now without him, without Brooks being there,
Yep.
can Andre Dillard hang? Can he step up on the other side? And then as you look at the depth, across the board, Pryor and Sayamalu are guys that that you can count on. But we've been waiting for this Jordan Mailata kid to develop for a long time. The singing,
Right.
the ukulele playing, singing, offensive tackle. And I would think that this is about that time where he's either going to have to step forward or they're going to have to move on. And they drafted two very versatile offensive linemen. But those guys aren't ready to step into the fire when you really need to have them step in the fire. What do you see with this offensive line? Because, for the last 4 or 5 years, they've been one of the better offensive lines, even enduring all the injuries. They've been one of the better offensive lines in the NFL.
If I were making the decision, I would have Matt Pryor playing right guard between two Pro Bowlers in Kelsey and Lane Johnson. And I would have brought the bodyguard back and put him back at left tackle. I'm still not 100% confident in Andre Dillard. Prime example, from what I read today, Andre Dillard was pulled out of the starting rotation and Mailata was put in. I think it's because he might have missed something, and they said that he was on the ground and he's beating his helmet out of frustration. Okay, that's a young player mistake. You have to remember, Dillard only played 29% of the snaps last year, so basically he's still a rookie. And because he didn't get that development in May, in June, it's not helping him right now.
He's still a rookie.
He's still a rookie. Prior to me, played very well in that playoff game against Seattle this past season. Why not put Pryor in there as big as he is, 6'8"? Are you kidding me? That's a big man. Put him in between Johnson and Kelsey and put the bodyguard back out there, say Amalo solid at the left guard position. Now you have arguably the best offensive line in the National Football League. I understand the Eagles have to get Dillard on the field to justify moving up to get him in the first round. But if he's not ready, he's not ready. And because he's protecting your quarterback's blind side, do you want somebody who's not ready protecting your franchise quarterback's blind side? Especially if he gets frustrated easily with some of the things that are not happening for him naturally yet. You know what they say, better safe than sorry. And I hope this doesn't come back to bite them down the road this season.
Well, I think they are aware that they can make that adjustment and make that move. I think you get Jason Peters some reps at guard, so if you have to play him at guard, he can play guard. But that's his natural position, and he probably could switch back to that, in a heartbeat. But the issue for me is, in the evaluation process when you're evaluating players. Sometimes it's really easy to get caught up on the size, the footwork, and all those intangibles, but you overlook, those things on the inside that only, football eyes can see. And by the time you get that guy in your stable, once you get him in your camp and then you realize that you made a mistake, that's a pretty lofty mistake. And I'm not saying by any stretch that Andre Dillard is a mistake. He could turn the light could go off and he could turn the corner at any moment. But if I'm going to draft a guy to fill in for Jason Peters, he's going to be the heir apparent. He better be, eating metal, spitting nails, and snorting rocks.
Right.
And as much as I've seen of Jordan Mailata, that's not him. He wants to just get in front of you. He just wants to make sure that he can keep you away. He doesn't want to demoralize you, beat you down, frustrate you. He just wants to get in front of you. And I don't think, when you're a left tackle, you got to be a world beater, man.
Yep. You got to be a nasty individual. You have to have a nasty mentality. Your mindset has to be, I am going to get inside of my opponent's head and I'm going to mentally beat him up as much as I am going to physically beat him up. And by the fourth quarter, I want to make sure he doesn't even want to line up across from me anymore. You have to win the mental game, as you know, as much as you do the physical game. And I think when you talk about Mailata right now and both Andre Dillard on that side of the football field, I don't think they have that mental makeup yet. And again, both of these guys are still young in the game, but you have to mature quickly in this game because if you don't, you will get eaten up and spit out in a lot of cases.
Well, I hope that the light goes off for one of these guys in a way that allows the Eagles to feel the most proficient group of guys on the offensive line.
Yeah,
And I thought that they would move Matt Pryor right into that starting position
yeah,
and at least keep Jason Peters over there to create the competition. See,
right,
my thing is, it took too long for them to make a decision on Jason Peters, in my opinion, because I think they wanted Dillard to have the job. They
right.
didn't want him to be here and for this kid to have to be looking over his shoulder. But to me, the cream always rises to the top. And you can't play him until he's ready. So even if you bring back a Jason Peters and he outcompetes him for the job, at least you know you got the best player there. And
Right.
when Jason Peters and if Jason Peters gets hurt, then you can bring him in. And you know what? If he can't handle the competition, then you most certainly drafted the wrong guy and missed a lot.
I think we're going to find out a lot about Andre Dillard this year, and hopefully, he's such a nice young man. I hope he succeeds. I think some cases he wears his emotions on his sleeves too much, especially when he gets frustrated. That could be a hindrance down the road. He's going to have to learn to, when you make a mistake, you have to forget about it in a hurry because nobody's going to pamper you and pat you on the back. You have to get back up on that saddle and be focused on the job at hand because if you don't have five wheels that are in sync, one wheel blows up, it could blow up an entire play, especially at a crucial point of a game. So you have to mentally get to yourself to the point where the little things no longer become the big things in your mind.
Well, listen, you guys, we're watching the Seth Joyner show with my special guest, Derek Gunn. In my day, if we got a guy like that, we would say, you know what, that guy is a weak link.
Yep.
He's mentally weak. So what we're going to do is we're going to trash talk him to death and make him take himself out of the game. And as bad as that might sound, that's part of the gamesmanship of sports. That's why players trash talk, in my opinion. That's why I trash talk. Because if I can get you thinking about something else besides what your job is,
Right.
then my job is what I've done.
That was your day. These players nowadays are more pampered and nurtured than ever before. And I've talked to so many ex-players, and one thing I've asked them was, why don't you go into coaching? You'd be a great coach in the NFL. And the comeback has always been, I don't want to coach these players nowadays. Man, these players nowadays are not like us. They can't take a lot of yelling. They shut down instead of building them up and allowing it to motivate them. A lot of these guys shut down nowadays. You have to be careful what you say to them and how you approach them. And I'm like, what? These are grown men. Football is about getting yelled at and getting knocked down and getting back up and hopefully mentally and physically making you tougher. But from what I keep gathering from former players is, I don't want to coach. I can't coach these kids nowadays. Because the way they want you to coach nowadays, I'm not built like that. I was coached a certain way. And if I can't coach a certain way that I was coached, I'm not being effective. So, and it's amazing how you have to have so many different, I guess, psychological approaches to coaching these players. When you played the game and I played high school and college, the coach treated everybody the same. He cursed out one, he cursed out all. He didn't care if you were the star player. He didn't care if you were the last player on the roster. You were treated the same. Nowadays it's like I got to treat player X different from player Y and player Z. I have migraine headaches every day trying to figure out who I can approach and who I can't approach.
Well, it definitely is different, and I just want to say this before we shift over to the other side of the ball. I want to let my producer Derek know. Let's get one more caller in before we wrap the show. But you're 100% correct, man. I mean, the game is so different. These players today, they wear their emotions out on the sleeve. A lot of the chatter that they do, a lot of the trash talk is more, look at me, look what I did, than it is, the psychological side of the game. For me, it was always psychological. Nowadays, guys want to be noticed. And talking about being noticed, what I noticed about the Eagles is that Jim Schwartz and his brand of defense, he still loves to dominate the game with a front four. That's evident. That's evident by the moves that they've made the last 2 years. They can no longer allow teams to continue to double Fletcher without the help that he needed. So
Right.
when they brought in Malik Jackson last year, Malik, had a foot injury that cost him all year. This year they double down. They go and they bring in, Javon Hargrave, and now he's out with a minor pec injury that makes him week to week. I've always said, because I know how close you've been to this thing, and you know how I stand about pressure. To me, pressure makes pipes bust. But will these additions allow Jim Schwartz to be more flexible, in your opinion, from a pressure standpoint, or will it just plainly be that he went to get all of these good players on the defensive front so that he knew that he could get 100% pressure and not have to worry about the pressure and bring the blitz?
The thing I like about what Jim Schwartz does up front is he loves to have a rotation, guys who can get off the snap fast and put pressure on the quarterback and disrupt a timing. As you know, it's a pass-happy league now. So what's the way to diffuse a pass-happy league? Is to get your hands in the face of a quarterback, get him off his spot, make a move where he doesn't want to move. And I like the fact, you look at a Vinny Curry, he can play inside or outside for this team. Malik Jackson can play inside or outside. Very versatile. Brandon Graham a lot of times will loop around inside as well. I like his versatility. And I like the fact that he likes to rotate 7, 8 guys and keep them a lot fresher in the fourth quarter. When a game gets down and dirty and grimy and gritty, and guys are standing there with their hands on their knees and they're dead tired, here comes Jim Schwartz's next wave of players. And there's not much of a drop off from the first wave of players. And you keep them fresher that way. You keep that offense guessing where that pressure is coming from. And as you know, Seth, a lot of times when you can get good, consistent pressure up front on a quarterback, it can disguise and mask a lot of the deficiencies you might have on the back seven.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to come back, to the defensive line, because I want to talk the defensive ends. But we got a guest, my man Larry, the ringleader, is coming up. Look at you, man. You just chilling with your wife beat on and your Eagles hat. What's happening, man? What's on your mind today? Welcome to the Seth Joyner Show.
Yeah, how you doing? Hey, so I caught your podcast last week with the linebackers, and y'all made a lot of valid points when it came to the defense and how the Eagles over the past few years would not, or seemed to was not interested in getting linebackers. And I agree, linebackers to me are the key to the defense, especially when, like you just mentioned a moment ago, the pressure on a quarterback to Scott makes your secondary looks great. But when you have a linebacker, and they had some good ones in the past few years, they're quick and fast as some of the running back, and we've seen all of our competitors up to ante when it came to the running back. Our linebackers should be able to chase them down from sideline to sideline or disrupt them in the backfield by putting a hand on them. You may not get the tackle, but you can put the hand on them enough to change their momentum. It gives a chance for your teammates to rally to that running back. So I think the front seven really is the front seven to me is the key to making the secondary look that much better, because y'all gonna bring on the pressure up front. And I wonder why the Eagles did not address that with some of the seemingly fast linebackers of the past few drafts. Why wouldn't they address that?
I think, and Derek, you can chime in, but I think that I like what they did this year. I like the kid Davion Taylor that they drafted out of Colorado, and I'm really excited about the kid Sean Bradley that they drafted out of Temple. I think that that they have enough there to create enough competition that you'll get the best two out of that group, because realistically, there are no more 3-4s, 4-3 defenses in the NFL no more. With 3 wide receiver sets and whatnot, and the ability to flex tight ends out like Zach Ertz and Kittle and Kelsey, you're basically living in nickel or dime situations. So those 2 linebackers have got to be guys that can make plays. The Eagles haven't really ever put a lot of emphasis on that position, but I was glad to see the 2 guys that they picked up this year. And I think that they're going to make a difference, even though everybody's worried about them. I think that those 2 guys are going to make a big difference. Your opinion, D?
I have a lot of question marks about the linebacking situation because there's a lot of what ifs. You're talking about the young players. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what if they get it quicker and make a significant contribution? What if Nate Gary can take his game to the next level? What if TJ Edwards can get better in pass coverage? What if Duke Riley can be more than a special teams player? There's too many what ifs. There's no one definitive linebacker you can count on in this defense. Right now, you're hoping bits and pieces can gel and form enough of a cohesive unit to be sufficient. But that big what if stands over all of these guys. A couple of guys you talked about, rookies making a transition. Nate Gary is what he is. I mean, he's decent, but is he exceptional? No. Is TJ Edwards exceptional? No. And when you look at a lot of defenses, it starts with the linebacking play and a lot of defensive schemes more so than a defensive line play. I mean, you look at the 49ers linebackers. The Steelers have always been linebacker you. Chicago Bears, look at their linebackers. Those are the guys that make that defensive unit in a lot of ways. And I don't see that with this Eagles linebacking core right now. Nigel Bradham, say what you want to say about him, but Nigel Bradham was the brain trust of this linebacking core. When he was in the last couple, 2017, 2018. You don't have a Nigel Bradham now to lean on. You got a lot of guys who have to find their way, so to speak, in this defensive scheme. And so I think the Eagles address the back end and they address the front end. But I think we're going to have a lot of what-if conversations about those guys in the middle.
Well, there's no doubt about it until they step up and show us what they can do. I think that, Jim Schwartz is the kind of defense coordinator that, he puts a lot of pressure on his front four to get the job done, believing that, with just adequate linebackers, you can get enough done, with a great front in front of you. And to a certain degree, that's believable. That's thinkable. You might be able to do that.
Right.
But I just think that, even if you don't invest heavily at the linebacker position, you got to have at least one guy that's a game changer at that position.
Yes.
I mean, that guy, he's got to be able to blitz. He's got to be able to cover. He's got to be able to play the run. I think you had some of that, in Michael Kendricks. You had some of that in Jordan Hicks. Those guys have moved on. But hopefully, they'll find at least one of those guys out of the group that they have. Those guys are behind the curve, so to speak, D, because, listen, Nate Gary's been in this system for 3 years. He knows what to do. That doesn't necessarily mean he can get it done all the time, but at least he knows what to do. TJ Edwards, undrafted, special teams player. He's now in position with the departure of all of these guys. Now he's in position to take his knowledge and step up and compete. But, I've been following the Eagles and watching the news. I see that Sean Bradley is flashing, especially, yesterday and today, laying some wood on some people. I coached the kid. I know that he can be, a difference maker. And from everything I've seen on this Davion Taylor kid, I'm led to believe that, this guy, he can run. He runs like a safety, but he's a sure tackler. He gives us something at that position that we hadn't had for a long time. But I'm just, my thing is, how do we pick and find guys that are better suited to be playmakers? I don't want a guy to just give me 80 tackles a game, and then that's it. I want to see a linebacker that makes a difference. I want to be able to see, a team come in with their dime package and their third down, running back, and you got a linebacker that's skilled enough to come up and pop that guy in the mouth and get on his inside hip and trail him and be able to run with him. See, because now if you can't do that, D, then you're always at the mercy of the offense. They're gonna personnel you to death. Because when you go dime, what are they gonna do? They're gonna turn around and run the ball down your throat. You go nickel, now they realize they got the mismatch on one of the linebackers and they can attack you. And all those things, all of those inefficiencies happen because we don't put enough onus, enough importance, enough urgency on the position of linebacker.
As good as your defensive front looks, there's going to be many times when they're not going to get home. And when you come up against the craftiest of the crafty quarterbacks and the Drew Breeses and Aaron Rodgers and all these guys, no matter how much pressure you put on them, eventually they're going to have their time to find who they're looking for. And if you don't have those active, athletic linebackers who can cover them tight ends, who can cover those running backs coming out of the backfield, and in some cases, we've seen linebackers who can actually cover slot receivers. If you don't have those guys, you're going to get picked apart. And so that's why I go back to what I said a few moments ago. What if? What if your defensive front doesn't get home? Then what happens? Because that's when the floodgates could possibly open. You don't have to worry about trying to go deep on Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox and those guys. How many times do we see these quarterbacks nowadays just dink and dunk their way down the field? Drew Brees, Rodgers, they mastered. Tom Brady masters at dinking and dunking their way down the field and picking you apart. And why is that? Because they defined your weakness in the linebacking core, and that's what they're going to attack until you show them something different.
Well, I want to get to the secondary, but I got to go back to these defensive ends because this is the position, in my opinion, that worries me the most. You got Derek Barnett, who's down again with a slight injury. I love Brandon Graham. I mean, the guy gives you everything that he has, but the truth of the matter is, he came close to double-digit sacks once a year and 2 years ago when he ended the season with 9.5 sacks.
Right.
He's not going to be that guy. He's just not going to be that guy who's going to give you double-digit sacks. Derek Barnett, put it lightly, has been a disappointment. And then we turn around and we sign Vinny Curry back. And I don't know whether that's because of familiarity or price point. I was really, really hoping that the Eagles would have signed Everson Griffin. That's the guy that I really like. There's been a lot of rumors, trade for Clowney and all that kind of stuff. But Everson Griffin to me is a prototypical four down front defensive end.
Right.
What are they going to do if Derek Barnett, flounders through another year? I know they got Josh Sweat. They love Josh Sweat. But to me, when I look at those four defensive ends that we have, obviously Brandon is the alpha of the group just because of the way that he plays the game. He plays it all out. But those other three guys, those other three guys, they all look like the same guy to me. They don't look like, you get any level up on either one of them. You could change the numbers and the jerseys and, the helmet size. They all look like the same guy.
When it comes to Josh Sweat, I'm still waiting to see what he is or what he isn't. I haven't seen enough of him to define what he is or what he isn't coming off the edge. Barnett it's been frustrating not only to himself but to the fan base as well because he can't stay healthy. I think when that kid is healthy, I think he has one of the quickest jumps off the snap of anybody in the National Football League. He has an exceptional bend in terms of being able to get up under these big offensive tackles and getting pressure. The only problem is you can't keep him on the football field. I think Brandon Graham, considering that he's 31 years old now, is going to give you everything he has. And Brandon Graham is going to be a force on that defensive front. Brandon Graham is what he is at this stage of his career. He's going to get you 6, 7, 8, maybe 8.5, 9 sacks. You're right. He's not that double-digit sack guy we all were hoping for when they drafted him. But he's good enough to be a consistent cornerstone for your defense in a lot of ways. But on the other side of the ball, Vinny Curry is back here because, number one, Vinny Curry was cash-friendly. Number two, Vinny Curry is family. And that's big with the Eagles. The Eagles are big about bringing back players who are considered family. Jason Peters was coming back, I believe. I said it consistently since March. Jason Peters was coming back no matter what, but he came back out of necessity even more so because of what happened with Brandon Brooks. But a Vinny Curry, cash-friendly, great guy in the locker room. Eagles didn't have a lot of cash to go out and get anybody much better in that regard, and that's why Vinny Curry is back here.
Well, when I look at the secondary, this is the most intriguing part of this defense because to me, the trade for Darius Slay allows them to do some things that Jim Schwartz has not been able to do since he's been the defense coordinator here because you know what you're going to get out of that guy. That's going to allow you to roll covers the other way, to lock up on the backside. It's going to allow you to do a plethora of things. The most intriguing competition for me is the Avonte Maddox Sidney Jones competition, because deep down inside they want Sidney Jones to win that job, but it doesn't look like that's what's going to happen. It looks to me like Avonte Maddox has pretty much locked it down. You know, I've said it before on my show, D. I felt like that year before last that Avonte Maddox had earned a starting position on the outside. They moved him inside to bring, Mills and Darby back, which I thought, was a mistake. And everyone talked about, his inefficiencies last year. And to me, that was all about moving him primarily inside. And then when they needed to move him outside, they moved him outside for a second-year guy, highly confused. I'm just trying to figure out, what's going to happen with Sidney Jones, because, listen, he looked like he was coming on towards the end of last year. I haven't been able to, I haven't seen him yet, so I don't know whether he's put some muscle on, gotten bigger, gotten a little bit stronger, so he could play at this level. But from what I'm reading, as far as what he's been doing, training camp isn't going too well for him right now. He's not really much competition to a guy like Avonte Maddox, who is fundamentally and technically more sound than any other DB on this roster, in my opinion.
If you followed me on social media and watched my show, Quick Slants, I've said consistently since March that the job is Avonte Maddox's to win or lose. And I would also tell you this, from what I was told inside, they're all rooting for Sidney Jones to step up his game, because this is a money year for Sidney Jones, and because he was so highly coveted coming out of college. At the time, as you remember, he was considered the elite cornerback coming out of college until he had the Achilles issue, and it took him a couple of years just to get his footing back. But I was also told Avonte Maddox is the better overall athlete. And Avonte Maddox right now is going to be your starting cornerback opposite Darius Slay. When I look at Avonte Maddox over the last couple of years, he's not the biggest cornerback out there. When you look at the cornerbacks now, 6'1", 6'2", everybody wants the taller, leaner cornerback. Avonte Maddox is like about 5'10". But Avonte Maddox is fearless. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He can get up and press cover you. If he gets beat on that double move, that out and up move, he has the quickness and the speed to recover and get back and battle for the ball. He is a sure tackler. And because of his versatility, if need be, you can also put him down in the slot position as well. And because of his versatility, that's what this Eagles organization loves about this kid, that he doesn't back down from a challenge. And so I think right now the only way Sidney Jones starts is if Avonte Maddox gives him that position, and I don't see that happening.
Now, I love everything that Howie did with the secondary this year. Right. The trade, the free agent signing of Will Parks, the experiment with Jalen Mills, the draft pick with Kevon Wallace. What he's done is he's created a lot of competition on the back end. Okay. We know for certainty, we know who's going to be the starting free safety, and we know who's going to be the starting left corner. Okay. There's enough competition elsewhere for things to play out in a way where you're going to get the best of the best. Even though Jalen Mills is penciled in, you've got a guy that the Eagles spent a pretty nice draft pick on in Kevon Wallace. That's a player. I love his style. I love his physicality. Will Parks, I don't know a whole lot about, but I know he's an able veteran. And then the competition over at the corner position just heightens, every single day, that I'm studying this thing, I'm looking to see, who's making strides and who isn't. Because, I've been in that situation before where you're thrown in the competition and it's like, okay, let's see who's going to rise to the top, who's going to rise and snatch this job and take this job. So it's just really interesting to me to watch and see. And maybe are there some contingency programs? What if both Avonte Maddox and Sidney Jones aren't getting the job done? Does that allow Jim Schwartz the flexibility to say, hey, Jalen, we need you to move back outside, and then you can move in a Will Parks or a Kevon Wallace, to start at the other safety position? It allows for him to have a lot of flexibility on that back end And I'm just the type of person that believes the more competition you can create, the
Right.
better player you're going to get as a starter.
There's no question. I love the depth and the versatility they have back there. And I don't consider Jalen Mills an experiment. Jalen Mills was a natural safety coming out of LSU. I think he'll be more comfortable there. Jalen Mills, to me, just did not have the quick twitch to play the cornerback position against a lot of these gazelles in the National Football League right now. But playing more of a center field type position, I think, is going to make him much more comfortable. Able to have everything in front of him, I think is going to make him more comfortable. I think he's going to be doing a lot of similar things that Malcolm Jenkins did, coming down in the box, moving around. We're not going to say he's going to do it to the Malcolm Jenkins level yet because we haven't seen it yet, but I do think he has that capability. And I think Jim Schwartz has been waiting for the right moment to make that transition from Jenkins to Jalen Mills and allow Jalen Mills, I think, to flourish. I think Jalen Mills is going to be a better safety than he is a cornerback in the National Football League. Rodney McLeod is the brain trust on the back end of that defense now. As you talked about, you know what Darius Slay is. Darius Slay is supposed to come in here and be the shutdown and take away that third of the field over there. If he's able to do that, I think it helps alleviate some of the burden and some of the pressure off the other three guys or four guys in the back end of that defense when they start playing nickel. So I like that, and I'm like you. I don't know a whole lot about Will Parks back there. I think Wallace right now, he's going to be a special teamer. He's going to come in here and be playing more special teams than he is going to get game reps on the back end of a defense. But as he continues to develop and grow and watch these guys, hopefully by the second half of the season, if need be, he will be a viable entity that you can stick in there and not have to hold your breath and cross your fingers and hope he doesn't get exposed with whatever his deficiency might be.
D, we can talk all night, man. We're over our hour, man, and like I tell all my guests, time is all of our most valuable commodities.
Yeah.
So I thank you for an hour and 12 minutes of your time. You coming on my show and just chatting with me, man. Listen, I'm praying for you. I'm hoping that whatever door God opens up for you, that it's a door that's a level up from where you were.
Thank you,
and
man.
enjoy that. Enjoy that granddaughter, man, and keep on grilling, brother. And I'll be talking to you soon.
20-month-old grandson. He's a demolition expert, runs the house. And I just want to say, I was on the Seth Joyner show. I finally got on the Seth Joyner show. That made my day.
Man, stop it. Stop it. Love you, bro, man.
Wait until I get fired to get on the Seth Joyner show.
Oh, stop it, man. Yeah, you always welcome on my show, whatever show I do, man. Anytime. Anytime. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna reunite you and Barrett. Barrett popped on one of my just Q&A days with just my viewers. I just take question and answers all day. But he popped on one day and I had him on for a little while. I'm gonna have the whole Quick Slants crew on one day, but we can just chat it up. I know that's gonna be hilarious.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. I'll put it together, my friend. Hey, listen, you guys, be nice to each other, take care of each other, love each other. Thanks for watching the Seth Joyner Show. I want to thank my producer, Tom Schrader, and Derek Stevenson. To all you fans that are following me, thank you for your support. I will be back right here next week with another edition of the Seth Joyner Show. Take care of each other. Peace.